Hi, I'm Brenna Huckaby. I have literally said my name 3 times. I just cut them out because I feel like saying hello to the YouTube channel can feel so much pressure to get it right. But you know what? We're sticking with this one because today's video is on authenticity. I'm going to cut out the awkward hellos because ain't nobody need to see that. But I'm going to tell you, they were a little weird. Okay, let's move past this. I'm Brenna Huckaby, 3-time Paralympic gold medalist snowboarder, hoping to go for my third Paralympic Games in Milan Cortina, Italy in March 2026. I'm here with my cat Mouse. I'm not going to touch her. She's like kind of iffy with me right now. And if you have cats, you know they will leave. And I don't think I can emotionally handle that right now. Today, I want to talk about this concept of authenticity. And if you're new here, what I talk about on my channel, this is the second video, so there's not a whole lot of history on this, but I like to talk about things that are just making me ponder, topics I'm questioning, and I also like to relate them to what I'm working on in my sport right now and also my everyday life. And right now, I have just been chewing on this concept of authenticity. In fact, this has been a concept I have been trying to uncover for myself for many years. But I would say up until recently, it has just been in the forefront of my brain. And let me tell you kind of what started this for me. So I have been in some form of therapy since 2018. And I feel like I've made incredible progress in how I live my life, how I see myself, who I am, and how to show up for myself. But things have really started to click into place and into practice in my life a lot easier very recently. So I've done a lot of work. They always say like no overnight success. There's always 10 years behind someone's overnight success. And I'm feeling that way right now in my mental journey and how I'm showing up and living an intentional life. And I feel like I've been putting in the work for so long and now I'm reaping those benefits. I'm seeing life unfold in a way that I'm proud of and I feel like I have control over because I'm living intentionally. And so in the last few weeks, I think one thing that has really shifted, I guess it's probably been a couple months now, is I've been seeing my sports psych weekly. I was seeing them bi-weekly for a while and then every month for a while, but going into the games coming up in less than a year, I wanted to give myself the best chance of success. And I've noticed that my mental game, like most athletes, is the thing that needs the most tweaking. And I think I'm going to see the most success by working on it. So I've made that my top priority next to nutrition and the gym. And I've been seeing my sports psych once a week. And one thing that keeps coming up in our conversation in a way that he validates what I'm saying, he's very good at that, is he'll be like, yes, that's you living authentically. I would go, it doesn't feel authentic. It's not how I show up all the time. So how is that authentic? And this is kind of what I want to talk about today is the way that authenticity is meant to show up in our lives, or at least the way that I'm understanding it and applying it to my own life. I want this to be very clear. I'm not a psychologist, though one day I would love to be. I am just somebody who has been in therapy for a long time and uses these skills in very high pressure situations. And also, I just am like annoyingly obsessed with trying to understand and make meaning in my own life and live a life that I'm proud of. So it's a lot of lived experience and my own perspective, but just know a lot of thought goes into these. I would show you my journals, but they're kind of depressing. But just know a lot of reflection goes into this. I guess how I want to start this and open up this conversation with you today is my understanding of authenticity that I've held for a very long time up until recently. When I first, and I feel like there was a big push on the internet and a lot of things come back to social media for me. I feel like there's just a lot of time that I've spent on there through my work and just being a zillennial. A lot of it does circle back to social media, but I remember a few years ago, I was working with a brand that was all about being real and being yourself and being true to yourself. And around this time, there was a lot of conversation around authenticity. And I was early 20s. I didn't fully know who I was, and I don't know if I'll ever fully know who I am. I think it's a constant understanding and uncovering. But at the time, I wasn't fully doing that. During this time of conversation around authenticity, I truly believed authenticity was showing up consistently as the same person with a rigid set of rules and structure, and that was being authentic. So basically, like, your authentic self could be applied to every situation out there, and if you showed up differently or it didn't feel comfortable and you still did something anyway, like that was not living authentic. And that's how I interpreted it for so long. And so this past winter, there was some uncomfortable situations on my snowboard team. And I was really grappling with how to show up authentically, that in my definition of authenticity, still be able to perform at the highest level and compete and not let how I'm showing up and handling these situations affect me in my sport. And the reason that that mattered is because for me, I'm not fake. If we have beef, we're beefing. If we don't have beef, we're not beefing. I rarely have beef with people, to be completely honest, but on the occasion that I do, I'm not going to pretend to be a friend if the circumstances for our friendship is not there. Because I don't think that's fair to you. If I pretend to be nice to you and a friend to you, but our life values so drastically do not align, and actually every time I hang out with you, I feel sick to my stomach and I'm not having fun, why would I pretend to want to hang out with you and pretend that everything's fine when it's not? And so that was how I was trying to handle this situation with the snowboard team stuff. I was like, okay, I'm going to make it known I don't F with this. So stop trying to bring me in because I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't like it. I don't want it. If these people show up, I'm going to say something if I'm uncomfortable. Like that's authentic to me. However, it causes discomfort. It causes issues within team culture. It causes like, it doesn't feel good. I feel like to just always have to be like, I don't like this, go away. Like, I don't like the way you're talking. This is uncomfortable. And so that's kind of what I was struggling with this winter. And I was working with my sports psych. I would call him probably quite frequently when this was happening. And one thing he kept saying, he would be like, okay, well, what are some options? So one thing within sports psych that we really work on is adversity is guaranteed. So what is your plan? So you know things are going to come up, but how do you handle them so that you can perform and live at your best? And so that's what we were working through, that framework. And I was like, well, for me, like, I just kind of like to silently remove myself. I don't really want to bring attention to it. I also don't want to be mean. I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be abrasive just because I don't align with the way that you're living and I don't want to be a part of it, but I also don't want to be rude and abrasive. But up until this point, that's all I knew how to be because I thought that was my authentic self. But as I was talking, my sports psych was like, no, that's being authentic to your values. And I was like, what do you mean that's authenticity to your values? So I ended up changing the way that I was showing up. I would silently remove myself and I didn't realize like, oh, authenticity is not just staying true to yourself and living for yourself, but it's also staying true to your values and living your values. So then I started thinking, well, I have different values in different situations. So my idea of a fixed, authentic identity doesn't always work because sometimes I want to show up on how my values are, and how I show up to live those values is not the same as this fixed, authentic identity that I have crafted and created. That really got my gears turning on what living authentically means. And the second part to that really hit me was, who is the self that I am being? Because I don't know about you, but I can almost guarantee who you are today is not the same person you were a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. We grow and develop if we're lucky. And I feel like if you're here, you're lucky that you put the time and the work in to understand who you are and to grow and evolve. Why wouldn't that person be different and have different values and have a different identity and sense of self? And so I was like, okay, wait, so which version of self am I trying to show up as? And I've noticed that authenticity is ever changing. The version of you in how you show up to your goals or survived instances of life, the habits that you formed, the mental mindsets that you have, the tools that you use to get to your goals or live your life, right? All of these survival tools for what period of life you're in. I don't know if you've ever gotten to a point where they no longer work. So I used to live in high anxiety, hyper independence, hyper aware of everything in hopes so that I could be safe. And that was a survival coping mechanism that I had developed for a very long time. And I remember sitting in therapy back in like 20, maybe, I don't know, between 2018 and 2020. And I remember being like, this isn't working for me. Actually, this hyper awareness, hyper independence, anxiety state that I'm living in is actually really harmful to me. And that was the first time that I had come to this learning that we need to change, but not because it's bad or wrong, but because that version of you and the tools and the ways that you have learned to live isn't going to carry you to where you're trying to go. This connection for me of this changing of how you live and show up in life, it's not a bad thing and you're not broken. It's just not getting you to where you want to be in life and the type of life you want to lead. So why wouldn't authenticity mimic that? So authenticity isn't this rigid set of rules that you're trying to live by. It's a fluid uncovering and developing of yourself that you apply to every instance in your life and how you become and live that day-to-day life, right? Because life is made up of moments. And so how you show up in those moments is how you are living and valuing yourself. For me, I'm learning that authenticity is living out your values. So you have to know your values and what you stand for. And if you haven't done that, there's so many amazing resources online. And again, those can change as you change. So living out and understanding your values. And two, knowing what version of self you are showing up as. I, right now, am showing up as the self that values deep connection and communication and sharing my heart. And for me, this is authenticity. This is the third thing that I've recently learned. And I think it was a TED Talk I listened to recently on authenticity, because again, I've been just like really hyper focused, but it's sincerity. How like showing up sincere is a very big pillar of authenticity. Like saying what you mean, meaning what you say. And I struggle with this a little bit, I'll be honest, because I definitely have a sarcastic and dry sense of humor, especially in my everyday life. And I've noticed I have two small kids, and I've noticed while they understand the humor now, because when I would do it in the past and they didn't understand it, I would immediately be like, oh my gosh, mommy is so sorry. Like I did not. It's the whole thing. I mean, if you have children, you're going to say something wrong. And for me, sarcasm and dry humor, I have said in front of them, and I had to deeply apologize because they don't understand. It wasn't that I was like saying anything very mean to them. It was more just like they didn't understand. So it was kind of like weird. Like, why would mom say that? And then I'm like, oh, shoot. But now my kids do that back to me, and I'm like, why would you say that? And they're like, Mom, I'm being sarcastic. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is this what it felt like? You poor child. I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. That was a tangent, and that was reality into my everyday life. Sometimes as a parent, we get it wrong. And for me, I gave them sarcasm and dry humor too early on, but they're funny children now, I gotta say. Because some of the stuff that comes out of their mouth, I'm like, period. Put that in a book. I have a quote book of them in my phone, and it kills me. So authenticity is also saying what you mean, meaning what you say. I don't know. I just think there's such a sense of bravery in showing up as authentic that we all can like remind ourselves of and have compassion for ourselves when maybe we don't show up in the most authentic way. And I've noticed with myself is authenticity in especially when you're living for a version of yourself that you're trying to develop and work on, because maybe that past version of yourself isn't doing it for you. It's not living a life that feels good and in alignment. Authenticity isn't always comfortable. Authenticity maybe is speaking out when you're scared and you're afraid, but you know that's true to your values and who you are and what in that moment you're aligned with. And so I think there's something to be said by people who make it a value to show up authentically. And I'm not tooting my own horn, but I do think there's something really, truly like necessary about that. I don't want to just keep harping authenticity, though I feel like there's so much more in my brain that I want to get out. But I also want to kind of stay true to the channel and how I relate it to my sport and what that means. When I think about authenticity right now, I am having this like internal dilemma that I'm working with my sports psych on. And it's, I want to be the best role model in my sport that I can be, but I also don't want to lose. So And I'm having this struggle right now of being a role model and being like rising up the next gen of girls that have come into the sport. And I've also kind of like stepped aside and I'm like, here you go, take the win, take the race. It's fine. And it's this mental block that I'm having because I told him, I'm like, well, my sports psych, I'm like, I want to be the best in my sport. That's a value of mine. But I also want to make sure that the new generation has like a strong leader and a strong role model and somebody that like I had one of the best role models, Vivian Mental Speed in the sport. And she was not easy to beat, but there was just this strength and this excitement that we were there and we were competitive. And like, I want so desperately to make sure that I'm doing that for the next generation. The one thing that Vivian had that I'm struggling to understand for myself is, again, she did not make it easy to beat her. And I feel like something inside of me is making it easy for other people to beat me because in my head, I'm like, oh, the next generation's here. It's time to pass the torch. Here you go. And so one thing I'm learning though is I can be authentic in being a leader. And I can also be authentic in my race of, girl, move. I'm coming. I got this. That's something I'm working on in my sport. I hope I can continue to show up authentically on here and just take time to be in connection with you. I loved last video. I thank you guys for the comments. I told my husband, I mean, listen, in the grand scheme of things, like if I compare myself to the big creators that maybe one day I would love to become, but maybe not. I don't know. I'm enjoying this here. But I sat down and I looked at my analytics and I was like, 25 people have seen this video. And then at the time, if I were to look at that on my other channels, if I only got 25 views, I mean, that's a huge failure. That's an embarrassment. And I didn't even have to go through the process of like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. Instead, I was like, I had 25 people in my living room and I had 25 people sitting with me and talking about belonging. And 5 of those 25 people at the time had liked it. So not only were they hanging out with me in my living room, but they liked hanging out with me so much they did this. And then I was like, man, it'd be so cool if I could get a comment. Like maybe that'll be my goal, is to have more engagement and communication with the 25 people in my living room. And then I got a comment and I just think it's really cool and such a like strong perspective shift. I've been on social media for many years and I've done it for my career for such a long time. And of course I share what's on my heart and what I think maybe a younger version of me would have liked to hear. But at the end of the day, on most of those major platforms, the views, the reach, the follows, the engagement is how I prove my value as an athlete. And it has been very difficult to come out of the mindset of this isn't performing well. I'm not getting good engagement. I'm a failure. My business is going to fail. My sports life is going to fail. It's very hard to shift that perspective and to start showing up authentically and with a goal of connection. And so for me, YouTube is mine. I've decided to go into it with a different mindset and a mindset of connection and being here and showing up for myself and for you. I'm really grateful to have, I think maybe we're at like 50 something people now. So like 50 something people in my living room. We can't fit in here. So thanks for coming. I forgot my tea and my water today, so I'm a little thirsty. I got Mouse here though, and she loves it. Don't worry about her. Even if she doesn't love it, she loves it. I'll have to get her to post more on mouse_goddess on Instagram. But until then, you can have fun hanging out with her here. But thank you so much for being here today, for listening. I hope, and I'm curious to know your understanding of authenticity and maybe how it's shifted in your own life. I am excited too to now go and deep dive into understanding like through a philosophical and psychological lens of authenticity and better deepening my understanding of that and showing that on my podcast, which I will post here. Listen, I'm a bit of a nerd, so I'm very excited to go deeply understand that logically instead of, for me right now, it's more of a realization and internal understanding, but I'm excited to learn like the data and information and to share that with you and my findings. As always, thank you for being here. Thank you for giving me the time to just speak off the top of the dome, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.